to the official podcast at contentchampion.com. Join our heroic quest to discover truly epic content marketing. Introducing your host, the content champion himself, Loz James.
Hello, Content Champions. Welcome to show number 47 of the Content Champion podcast. Thanks as ever for listening. In this episode, I'm delighted to be speaking with Californian entrepreneur and adventurer Danny Flood, founder of Open World magazine. Over the last few years, Danny has visited over 30 countries and has started 3 location-independent businesses in that time, using advanced content marketing techniques to build successful ventures in every case. With a new book out entitled Hack Email, Connect with Anyone, Build Your Business and Brand, Become an Unstoppable Force, I thought it would be a great idea to chat with Danny about his business and travel experiences and how in particular he uses email to reach out to prospective clients to grow his brand and sales. Let's dive in. Thanks for coming on, Danny.
Hey, Loz. Thanks so much for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Author, entrepreneur, podcaster and traveller, you're the founder of the Open World magazine and podcast and have started 3 location-independent businesses. You've visited over 30 countries and have managed to cut your working hours to just 10 a week using strategies and tactics we're going to outline today. In particular, your new ebook, Hack Email, helps us master email outreach to connect with anyone to build our business and brand. And that's what we're going to discuss in this episode. Before we kick off, though, could you tell us your backstory, please?
Yeah, sure. So my new book, it's called Hack Email, Connect with Anyone, Build Your Business and Brand, and Become an Unstoppable Force. It's actually my 4th book, and the basis for my newest book, Hack Email, came about from everything I've learned from promoting and marketing my first book, By Your Own Island. When I launched that, it was an Amazon bestseller for a few weeks. I had about 50 or 60 interviews. I did a bunch of radio interviews across the US and a whole bunch of podcast interviews, and it was actually surprisingly easy. I kind of started using CRM process to kind of build relationships and book all these interviews. I did all my promotion myself. But it was also years in the making from just different concepts that I've explored, such as NLP, Brian Tracy, where he talks about the art of closing the sale, and researching Dan Gable, who's the most successful wrestler of all time. Basically, what I realized is that a commonality that successful people have, what makes most people not successful is that they don't get what they want because they're too timid to ask for it. People like Dan Gable, he attributes his success to always making the first move, always being proactive. And in the business landscape for this, I think the front lines are email. So I initially wrote a blog post about how to be successful by making the first move, just being relentlessly proactive and following up and being persistent until you get what you want. And that's really the key, I think. So I kind of expanded on that and created a guide for the email space. And as you mentioned, I have been traveling for about 4 years now, almost full time. And, before I go into any new city, I have to reach out to people. I have to say, hey, I'm coming, let's meet up. I'm just constantly, reaching out to people, meeting new people, couch surfing and doing all kinds of stuff. So it's just kind of a blend of proactivity and being the first to make that move, making the approach, and just following up and getting what you want. If you just ask for it, it can be really easy.
Okay, we'll dig down into the details of the book in a moment, but I'm sure everyone wants to know more about your lifestyle. Why did you choose to travel, Danny? What's so enticing about it? And give us a flavour of some of the countries you've been to.
I started out back when I was about 23, 24. I was self-employed. I started an agency, a marketing agency, and I just felt like I was spinning the wheels. I had all these goals, but I didn't feel like I was getting any closer to them, and I just got tired of the same old routine. And I just really dreamed about traveling and just being a nomad. I realized that if I could make it so my business was all virtual and I could just travel around and see the world, and that really appealed to me. And at first, I kind of stumbled along. I was living out of my car. I didn't really know much of what I was doing. But I did a 2-month litmus test where I moved down to Mexico for a couple months. I did a trade with a lady at a guest house there. I helped her design a website in exchange for a free place to stay. So that way I could mitigate the money risk, the financial risk to some extent. And I've done a lot of those trades as well when I travel. And everything went perfectly. The business still ran even though I was gone. And then I booked a one-way ticket to South America, backpacked for a year all over the Americas, spent a couple years out in Asia, backpacked through all the countries around there. And, I'll have just goals. I'll say, in 3 months I want to climb Mount Rainier, or I've done a motorbike trip across Vietnam, for example, or or sailed across the South China Sea, or 2 years ago I bicycled across Mexico solo. So, I just say like, this looks like a fun adventure. I want to do that. I just kind of set up systems, so that I can keep business running as usual, no matter where I am. And it hasn't always been easy. There's been points where I've worked 10 hours a week, but then there's been times where I've just trying to fill in every space of free time with work just so I can, keep things going, just kind of keep the wheels on. So, it's been some ups and downs, but I've learned an awful lot from the process.
That sounds amazing, especially the motorbike trip across Vietnam. Reminds me of the Ewan McGregor trip he did across Africa. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't. I have to look that up, actually.
I'll put a link to that as well because it's amazing. Okay, so you've got a lifestyle that we all want to emulate. I'm here in a hot office in rural Essex, just a sort of hour outside London. If I want to live the laptop lifestyle, obviously I've got to promote my business. And this is what we're talking about today, your new ebook, Hack Email. So you're saying that email outreach is this sort of promotional drive to keep your business going while you're on the road. It starts with best practice. And in the book, you talk about the 7 things we should avoid. Now, I obviously don't want to give away all your secrets with this from the book, but what are some of the main things we should watch out for in avoiding terrible email outreach?
Yeah, sure. So just to back what you just said, I've noticed that the best way to build your online business organically and get your content seen is to build the right relationships. So that's kind of where this experiment of outreach developed from. But as far as regarding horrible mistakes, I get pitched by people all the time, and unfortunately there's just no way I can respond to them. Because I think most people, they don't email the right way. And it could just be like subtle factors, that we don't even think about. First, your email should be structurally and technically sound. 2, it should be as colloquial as possible. It should be very informal, just like you're talking to a friend. Never start an email out with dear sir or madame. Somebody sent me a message like that on Facebook. And it's like, well, you couldn't tell what gender I was. You addressed me as dear sir, madame, and I felt embarrassed for the person. Make sure the message gets read. So if you're sending a message via Facebook, for example, if you're not friends with the person, it's going to go to their other folder and they'll never even read it. Don't ever trigger the too long didn't read impulse, like a huge block of text. You need to break it up, 1 or 2 sentences per paragraph. Don't weave together too many conflicting thoughts, and don't let the email be open to interpretation. It should be very clear who you are, what you're asking of them. You should show that you know the person or the topic that you're talking about. Don't ask them like a very vague or general question like, I want to get started in this, where should I start? It's like, well, I've written a book about that. Maybe you should read my book first, and then if you have specific questions, then you ask me. Also, be mindful of the voice that you project and try to communicate on the same level as the other person. So whenever I'm writing content or writing an email, I'll always use you when I speak to strengths and we when I speak to weaknesses. So for example, if you're talking about referencing something negative or something bad, if you said like, I just want you to understand that, I would change that to, it's just important for us to understand that we are, and I include myself when I say that, if I'm referencing something like that. And then, again, the other mistake is just try to edit out as many of the I's, me's, and my's as possible, and try to make it about the other person. So rather than say, like, I want to see if you could come join me on my show, wanted to see if you'd like to discuss your new book with my audience of listeners, for example. I think if you avoid those mistakes, you can make a big improvement from there. And then, again, I go the next part of the book is I talk about how to write really killer emails, that almost compel a response.
It is all about give and take, isn't it? It's about reciprocation, the laws of relationships. Give us a bit of a flavour of what makes for awesome email outreach.
First, you have to understand the power of positive speech and creating positive NLP anchors. So if you can use like really positive subject lines, like thank you or I loved your article, something that's going to make the other person feel good, it trains them to like delight in seeing an email from you. It welcomes correspondence from you. Other tips like you need to really kind of compliment their work. Everybody likes to see a compliment. So if you also subscribe to their newsletter or something and say, hey, that was a great email, I really loved it, or I love this article, this is what I loved about it. People love to get feedback on their work. There's other things like occupy the moral high ground. That's one way to demonstrate value. So if you have a very powerful why, if you're asking something from someone and you have a very powerful mission that's driving you, people are really drawn to that. At the same time, you can demonstrate vulnerability. So display like a chink in the armor where you say, I could use a little bit of help. Do you happen to know anyone who does this or whatever? I don't like to offer like, quid pro quo business incentives. However, if you can offer to like promote them or do something for them, something specific that they want, that's really powerful. If you have a compelling story that's really enchanting, like a great aspiration or David versus Goliath, profile in courage, Another technique is name dropping. So if you have like a mutual friend in common, that can really cut through the clutter and get a response from them.
Okay, let's look at the technology behind this, because as you said, you need to streamline your systems when you're living a laptop traveling lifestyle to keep things going. Because I'm a tech nerd, one of the most interesting chapters from my point of view was all the tools that you're using. So what are the sort of prerequisites that we must have to get the job done and streamline what we're doing in terms of email outreach?
One of the most effective ones is Boomerang. Boomerang allows you to schedule an email to go out at a certain time. So if someone emails you back and it says, oh, I'm on vacation, let's touch base in 2 weeks. So you just write the follow-up right then, and then you schedule it to go out 2 weeks from now. And that's a really effective way to keep in touch with people. If you're emailing someone the first time, what I sometimes do is I'll write like 10 emails, and then I'll use Boomerang to schedule it out to go a week later, and I'll check the box if I don't hear from them. So if I don't hear from them, I automatically send a follow-up, and then I use the subject line, did you get this email? And that usually gets their attention. And then, I won't challenge them too much, but I'll say, okay, maybe this email just got lost in your inbox or something. Here's why I wanted to follow up, and this is a really cool thing, and ask for a really specific request. As far as tech, I like Wisestamp. I've gotten a lot of compliments on that. It's kind of like a personalized signature for your email. Streak is pretty useful because it allows you to store snippets, which are basically like text expanders. You just type in a little bit of text and then you have a pre-written email to send to people for certain processes. Streak actually has a lot of other features like mass customized mail merging. Another tool I like is Twofer, Toofr. Basically, if you find people, if you just have their first and last name and their domain, Twofer does a really good job of finding their email address.
Let's just back up a little bit and look at Streak in a bit more detail.
You go into that in Hack Email, your new ebook, in some detail. There's a chapter on this, and it's a CRM for Gmail. Is that right? Because I haven't used it at all. And like you were just saying then, sort of process-wise, what enables you to store snippets so that when you're doing certain tasks that are repetitive, these snippets just pop up and you can cut and paste them in? Or how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. I never really got into CRM before I discovered Streak because most of the CRMs out there, like Salesforce or Zoho, are kind of tailored to large corporations and large organizations with sales teams. But Streak is, it's a free add-on for Gmail, and there's no reason not to use it, I think. So if there's certain processes, if you create like certain communication systems, like say, for example, you're interviewing someone for your podcast and you have to follow up with them. Maybe you want to follow up with them, when the interview is published. So you can have a snippet that just says, thank you, here's your interview. Maybe you can have another snippet that follows up with them a month after that, kind of just to touch base. Because, like a lot of people, they'll interview someone for a podcast, but then they don't follow up and they kind of lose that relationship. You spent an hour, interviewing this person, you built a relationship. It's important to nurture those relationships, I think. In my first business, my agency business, everything was about managing the communication process. So there would be like certain milestones in the system where they would receive some kind of correspondence from us, whether it's a Friday status report, whether it's a gift basket once the project is completed, whether it's a congratulatory letter once they've signed a proposal on a Starbucks gift card. So basically just identifying certain milestones that happen in your business and then time like some kind of form of communication to go out at that interval. And I think that's a really great way to stand out no matter what your business is or what you're doing.
And you can only use Wisestamp, can't you, and Streak with Gmail. I'm not using Gmail at the moment, but I'm really coming round to it because you can get branded emails now that match your domain through Gmail. You can then obviously put on your signature, as you've talked about with Wisestamp. And this Streak app sounds well worth a go. And I get quite a lot of spam now, and dealing with that, I understand Gmail has got different sections in it that you can use to streamline your process in terms of all the really rubbish stuff goes in one bucket and then you get the good stuff coming through filtering through to the top. Is that right?
Yeah, there's definitely ways to filter through spam. I think Gmail has really powerful spam filters, so I don't really receive spam too often.
Okay, getting to the crux of the issue, and this is sometimes, I think, apart from the technology and the strategic premise of what you're doing, and we know that it works, finding the people to connect with, finding the right people can be quite difficult. And you cover this in the book as well. How do we find people to connect with that are going to form meaningful relationships that are sort of genuine but mutually valuable, if you like?
Yeah, sure. So one technique I like is the exclusion search. You can Google that. But basically what it does is I'll try to find other people within the niche that are already successful. Everyone has a niche, whatever it is. And then I'll just kind of like Google them and see who's covering them. Ryan Biddle, for example, our mutual friend. I might Google him, but I'll use an exclusion search where I put a minus sign and I'll subtract his domain. and then I'll subtract other websites, like, for example, Facebook or Amazon.com, any external site, just a generic site. And then I can kind of get an idea of who's featuring him, who he's networking with, whose podcast he's coming on, like yourself, for example. And also Google Images is a great way to do that. And then I'll just kind of collect a list of about 10 people that way. And then again, I'll use Twofer. Twofer is really great to find email addresses about 80 to 90% of the time. And you can get their email address to contact them, or sometimes I'll connect with them through social media. Another really powerful app that I like is Triber. It's great for connecting with people within a certain niche if you're blogging. So probably most of your listeners, they probably have a blog because they're doing content marketing. And on Triber, there's like certain tribes. And Triber is awesome because it integrates with both your blog, they have a plugin, and your social media accounts like Twitter, for example. So when you join a tribe, and whenever you have a new piece of content, your content is sent to the tribe. And then other people can share your content. And you can also share their content automatically through Twitter, and it all gets automated. And, like if you see other people in your niche and they see you like constantly sharing their content, that's a great way to get on their radar and kind of just naturally build relationships with them. Plus you're giving your audience relevant content, plus they're sharing your content as well. So it's kind of everybody wins situation.
You're listening to the Content Champion Podcast, showcasing the best content marketing strategies across the web.
We're back with Danny Flood.
I've been looking at your Open World magazine and your podcast, and your business has grown massively, hasn't it? Could you put any figures to your growth that shows us how well this email outreach works, if you like?
At the moment, I guess you could say I have 3 official location-independent businesses, like official brands, but I have a bunch of different projects that I'm like experimenting with, like minimal viable products. And I just want to bring them to the market quick and then kind of just get them out in front of people to see if they're interested buyers. So, a big part of what I do is I'll network through like Facebook groups, for example, like certain niches, like the travel niche, for example. One thing that's really worked really well with Open World magazine is we've done like these compilation posts where I have like 30 people contribute to one article, and I find all those people through Facebook. I did one article which was the top 30 adventurers under 30, and basically once I posted that article, my blog traffic went from 6,000 a month to 16,000 between 1 month, actually. It's been close to that number ever since, and it's just growing steadily from there.
You reached out to all those people once you'd put them in the article, and they shared it, and then that level of traffic stuck.
I didn't actually reach out to those people via email. I wanted to kind of reach more people with one message, so that's why I use groups like Facebook. I use Reddit a lot, so I'll go onto Reddit, like under a certain category, like Backpackers Reddit, and they'll say, hey, I'm putting together this post. Reddit has a big community. I don't know if it's really effective for those types of posts, like if you're doing a big compilation to do one-on-one emails. But if you're doing like a one-on-one interview, then I think that's very effective.
Okay, well, let's get back to Hack Email, your new ebook. Towards the end of the book, again, and this is something that really interested me, we've mentioned Ryan Bedolf, and he talked about the habitual part of writing and outreach and going out there and leaving comments on blogs and that sort of habitual daily process of always writing and always promoting. And you talk about this sort of in your book, this ongoing promotional process, and that's the key to getting long-term results, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I don't really like to write a piece of content if I don't have a plan already to promote it. I think it's just kind of like the wrong way to do it. I think you're just kind of like up on a podium speaking to an empty room. And I think Ryan Biddulph, like he's got the right idea where he'll post one blog post per week. I think a lot of bloggers, like, they say, like, I'm going to write 50 articles and in the first 2 months, I'm going to be posting like 4 articles per day. I'm like, are you serious? I think that's one of the reasons why people give up so easily is they try to write so much content, but they should really slow down and focus on who's my target audience, where are they hanging out online? How can I get them to really engage with the content? And, I'll sometimes post like, blog posts on Reddit or Facebook, but I'll make sure that I'm kind of like giving value and not really asking for much. I don't want to be like too spammy. And people really engage with that. I think Reddit is a great kind of litmus test for how well you're doing because it's very objective. People will upvote it or downvote it once you post there. So you really got to come out with your strongest headlines. You got to come out with your strongest blog posts. And I think for content marketers, Reddit is great. It's a great practice because there's all these different niches, subreddits with like people within a certain niche. And then you can really tailor the content to them. So I think that's really effective. And, it's free to post on there. And it's really great practice as well.
And then you've got Brian Dean, of course, and other people who write one monster 15,000 word post once a month and just spend the whole rest of the time promoting it, which is ballsy. I don't know if I could actually do that. I'd be worried about, tumbleweeds in between, but I guess that wouldn't be the case, because if you, as you say, using email outreach and these other techniques you're touching upon here, if you do promote in a habitual daily way, you're going to get those better results, like as you say, than just putting out perhaps thinner content every day, aren't you?
I think to succeed with content, if you're going to promote going forward, you really have to think about how it's going to be perceived by the person and create like interactive content that people can really engage with. So for example, one piece of content I'm working on right now is a kind of a personality test where I'll invite people to go to the website and then, find out what's your personality type in this niche. If you're going to promote it, create content that either creates a discussion or gives away like some value, like some reciprocity, for example, where you're just giving away an offer that's just so good that people can't deny it. You're just unselfishly giving something away that's really good. I think people are really tired of like reading SEO articles and just articles with no substance, and then they're like 400, 500 words. It just kind of like waste 10 minutes of their life. So definitely stay away from that.
Okay, and to sort of round up our discussion on email before we move on to a couple more questions, how important is email outreach? You've obviously based your new book on it, Hack Email, but how important is it as an overall strategy? Is it like the one essential you can't really do without?
Yeah, it's definitely really, 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 really important. I've been experimenting with it a lot because I've just been so nomadic. But when I started out with my agency, I was building relationships face to face. Like I would go to business referral groups, hand out business cards, shake hands. But when I became a nomad, like I didn't have access to that anymore. So basically, I just have to get out in front of as many people as possible. I have to get out there. And I've done all kinds of crazy experiments. Like I had a client that was a skincare company based in Malta, and they had a list of like 100,000 people, and they want me to reach out to them. So overnight, I would send out 100 mass customized emails, and I was like terrified to press the button. And, when I marketed my book, I did a bunch of like, mass customized emailing to huge lists. And, I was a little bit terrified of doing it at first, but surprisingly, like a lot of great things came from it actually, because I wrote a really great pitch with a lot of value. And I've actually gotten clients from those emails that I've done, and I wasn't even expecting to get clients. I was basically just trying to get interviews, and some of them have ended up hiring me. So that's kind of another spin-off productized service that I have now as well. All kinds of opportunities can come from this. If you know how to deliver a really great pitch that gives a lot of value, if you can customize it enough. In my last chapter of my book, I kind of say you have to develop the routine, basically. And I say, set a minimal, easy to meet requirements. So I suggest that every Monday you send out 10 customized pitches. Whatever the most important metric is to you, whether it's scheduling guest blog posts, interviews, just send out 10 emails on Monday, 10 emails on Wednesday, 10 emails on Friday, just so that you develop the habit. Don't overwhelm yourself, but you never know what's going to come from those relationships. So many good things can come from that. And I think email is really the front line for business communication.
So the message is, if you're not doing email outreach, you should be. And I guess supplementary to that is, if you haven't read Hack Email by Danny Flood, then you should go and get a copy of it. So Danny, can you remind us where we can find you online and listen to your podcast, read your blog and buy your books, please?
Yeah, sure. So my blog is openworldmag.com. I have a link to the book in the sidebar. I also have a free audiobook. That's my first book, Buy Your Own Island. It's at buyyourownisland.com/audio-book.
Wait for it, listeners. Here comes the PS question.
Could you please share one advanced content marketing strategy we can use right after the show?
And I am fishing here because you talked earlier on about the 16,000 visitors. I know you've kind of mentioned your Facebook work before, but is there something we can take out of that we can go and use after the show?
My site is a magazine, not a blog, so I try to curate content as much as possible. I think it's really great if you can just kind of get other people involved and on board with your mission. I think the mission of your website should be really clear so that people can really dig it and kind of latch onto it. I try to ask questions and then make content that makes people feel good. It's really accentuating the positive, really proactive, featuring inspiring stories of people. And when I do that, when I tell a really inspiring story, people love to share that. And all of their friends share it because they're so excited and inspired by them. So if I'll do like a post like 30 top adventurers under 30, I'll tag every single person that I featured in there. And then they're sending it out to their newsfeed. And that article, we got over 300 shares just on that one article alone. And it took me a long time. Like, it took me 3 or 4 weeks to put together that piece of content, but I think it's definitely worth it. And I think you really need to give people substance and really make whoever's contributing, like, make them the star. Make them look really good. What people are most interested in is themselves. So their own ego is really a powerful motivation to get them to share content.
Well, that's a fantastic strategy, a fantastic book, and we've had a fantastic conversation. So thank you very much for your time today, Danny, and I wish you all the best of luck with everything in future.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lars. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and hope your listeners got something from it as well.
You've been listening to the Content Champion Podcast, available at contentchampion.com, Stitcher, Zune, the BlackBerry Network, and on iTunes. Until next time, thanks for listening.